Danielle Smith, if you're listening to this, you must intervene with the University of Lethbridge, which is a 3-time violator of the free speech policy. Leroy Littlebear, the administrator at the University of Lethbridge, after students had assaulted me, stole my property, did all sorts of horrible things, said that the students had done a fantastic job in neutralizing me. That was an administrator at the University of Lethbridge, which was an absolutely shocking display of deranged students who have been encouraged by the faculty to act the way that they are. And this has the backing of the University of Lethbridge Faculty Association. This university will not self-correct, and the only way it's going to change if the government says that it will withdraw 5% of the University of Lethbridge's funding if they do not hold an event with myself, Tony Hull, and Aaron Pete discussing whether the residential schools were genocidal. And that should be done.
It's so good to be with you, friends, and a warm welcome as you join us for tonight's show. If this is your first time here, you've come to the right place, where we are committed to providing information, resources for everyday Canadians. Tonight, our guest speaker is Dr. Frances Widdowson, and the title of tonight's show is Collapsing TRC Attacks. Widdowson Wins. It's June 3rd, 2026, and this is the Empower Hour. It's my pleasure to introduce you to Tanya Gaw, the founder and leader of Action for Canada. Tanya and the Action for Canada team are committed to bringing public awareness to the many serious issues facing our nation, including tonight's interview with Dr. Frances Widdowson. Will you all please help me welcome Tanya Gaw. Hello, Tanya.
Hi, Heather. Thank you for that introduction. I am super looking forward to the conversation tonight with Frances. It's going to be amazing. This is a courageous lady. Like, she has tenacity, and she is somebody that is on the front line of telling the truth. But as always, I like to share a few items before the guest comes on, just to add a little further context to what's coming. But I'm starting off on a high note tonight. This is such a major, massive win in Alberta. We have been lobbying government and meeting and writing letters and serving notices of liability and providing 3-inch binders with measurable harms to children with evidence of that. And over the years, they began to listen, and they didn't just listen, they acted. And Bill 25 has passed third reading and royal assent. It is law. And come September, all of the political and ideological agendas are going to be removed from the Alberta schools. So that means SOGI 123, DEI, CRT, as well as land acknowledgements. And so we're asking you to be vigilant and to make sure that schools are complying. Talk to your kids, ask them how their day was, ask them if they made any certain acknowledgements. And you know what? Let's be on top of that. And this is the start. This is one incredible province that has really begun to understand the war that we are up against. And so Action for Canada has been honored to work on your behalf and our children's, and we're just so happy, so thrilled with this result. And there will be more to come. There's even more work that we're doing in the background, not only in Alberta, but other provinces. And when there's something further to report, good news is always good, especially during these times where things can seem so dark and impossible. And anyways, knowledge is power. I wanted to say, if you're not already a member with Action for Canada, sign up with us. I always send out an information page about our guest, what the topic is going to be. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the forged media, or AKA CBC, APTN, and including Canadian Heritage. So they thought they'd be a bunch of smarty pants and trick a bunch of us and embarrass us, but they actually came into my home under false pretenses. And I had one of the best interviews I've had in my whole life on this subject. They were going to do a documentary, apparently. And so I really hope they run it. Don't take nips and parts from it, right, to try to misspeak what I'm saying. You know, the whole thing. I was loving, I was kind. We're on the right side of this. We're telling the truth. We want the truth. Everybody should know the truth. But the other side thrives on lies because they have a really big global agenda. They want our land, they want our resources, they want our minerals, and a massive wealth transfer. It's just like so shocking that they think that they can get away with this. Hans has done a great image once again to kind of give that idea of, what's going on. And I look at this as that the Forge Media ambush was sort of a hit to the flagship Truth and Reconciliation, because now even more Canadians are aware of what they did. Shameful is something that would describe them. They came after the RCMP. This is Pam. Or it's actually Molly, but I greeted her into my home and welcomed her as Pam. That's the lady that came on. Get a good look at her. I think she thinks she's really clever as well, and we'll take a look at Igor in a moment. So let's put a few things in context. But before we do, I also, under current issues, drop down to UNDRIP, and you will see this page that I started 3.5 or 4 years ago because a chief came after me and said I couldn't come into, his city, and I'm like, or his little town. I'm like, oh yeah, I can. And so we did, and we had our meeting anyways. But they've really, really been trying to shut down anybody that wasn't going along with these lies. Breaking news report: an 8-year RCMP investigation into BC Indian residential schools shows no evidence of murders or clandestine burials. This is the billions of dollars. I could add to this. I haven't updated in a while. Hundreds of billions of dollars going into the reconciliation industry to this fraud. This is a wealth transfer between this and the fake climate change and the green initiatives. Canadians are being robbed blind. And 86% of the missing and murdered women was done at the hands of the Aboriginals themselves within their own communities, and so on and so forth. Empty graves, great information on here. Michelle Sterling's been on. Anything that you would need where you're like, I'm just waking up from this, and what are you talking about? I thought this was all legitimate. And it's like, no, you're being lied to. And we've been working for many, many years to expose it. So lots of great information on this page that you can just grab and send to that MP or MLA and help educate them, because they've been being heavily lobbied by one side. So that's what I would suggest. Just a real quick clip.
Everyone who, by communicating statements other than in private conversation, willfully promotes hatred against Indigenous peoples by condoning, denying, or downplaying the Indian residential school system. A is guilty of an indictable offense and liable to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 2 years, or B is guilty of an offense punishable on summary conviction.
So, Bill C-9 is before the Senate, and the Senate committee ended up deciding to make an amendment, and they put forward basically that if you are in denialism, that's now a criminal offense, or that's what they're intending. It hasn't been voted on yet, but so they're criminalizing denialism. And so I posted about this right away, and I said facilitating a takeover is called treason, not denialism. And that's basically what's happening here. If you can't uncover the graves, if you're not willing to dig, and all you're doing is taking the money, something's seriously wrong. And we have every reason to question this. So again, this was a Black Rocks, and again, questioning the 215 children purportedly buried in Kamloops. None have been found despite millions spent on remains excavation. This is what's taking over our mainstream media. This is always the front news. Western Standard's doing a great job pumping out many, many articles on this. Robert Phillips, political executive with the First Nations Summit. And I'm going to say they weren't first and they didn't create a nation. So I refuse it. It's the Aboriginals or the Indians. That's what's according to the Indian Act. Stated that denialism of the Kamloops graves brings misinformation, prejudice, and racism to affected residential school survivors. Well, if you're not going to take millions of dollars from Canadians without any proof, you won't hear any denialism here. Think what you would like. But unless we see evidence, there is this money train has to just stop. And then 5 years after unmarked graves, Canada still has no bodies. The untouchable elite, how chiefs, councils, and politicians built a system without accountability. These leaders are benefiting. I have allegedly a report about a chief. His name is Sparrow, and he's head of the Musqueam Band, and they've been given $6 million And the band is asking where the money is. And there's alleged reports of him yelling at people, I don't have to tell anybody. Well, the Canadians who are footing the bill for all of this, they certainly deserve accountability. And these are just a few things why I'm saying bringing Frances on. I want you to see some of the headline news and understand, I believe a lot of this is escalating as well, because now more and more Canadians are aware. And that's thanks to people like Frances and Michelle Sterling and Nina Green and those of us who are standing on the front line. And as you know, the progress in Alberta has been put on halt because they say, oh, you know what, the Aboriginals weren't properly consulted. That's not in our Constitution or Charter anywhere. So it says Daniel Smith gets it. Aboriginal rights have gone too far, to the point where she's asking other premiers to consider amending Section 35 of the Constitution. And then, of course, David Eby is deep into all of these backroom illegal deals. So a headline, BC is creating a new apartheid through Aboriginal title and modern treaties. And, you know, the Aboriginals make up like, what is it, 3% of the population or less. And it's like, what do they think they're going to do? We got Muslims coming in en masse. They make up more than they do. Do you really think they're going to win this war? And that's what it's turned into. So anyways, this has got to do with Frances being at an event recently at the Lethbridge University. And thank goodness, thank you donors to these universities who pulled funds, $15,000. And the guy, the head of Dragon's Den, he offered them $100,000 if they would just apologize. And they said no. I mean, can you imagine how twisted their minds are to keep up with this? So now we're going to move into very close to getting Frances on. So CBC funded hit pieces against Canadians unforgivable. They really attacked the RCMP, retired RCMP. And so they're actually putting forward a legal team to review this. I'm not sure where all of that is at. And because of it, CBC has hit the pause button. Pause. That's not good enough. It's pause on this charade rather than getting rid of it. That's just Molly again. And now I'm just going to introduce you to 2 minutes of who it was that Frances spent some time with when she was going through this process. I'll play only 2 minutes and then we're going to get into this. We're going to get some updates and have a good conversation.
What's this about? Tell me what this is about. Who are you? This is a pile of shoes that I believe 2 Aboriginal people came and dumped on the table. This seems to be a setup of some outfit that's doing a reality television show that wants to paint me, I guess, as some kind of a racist or something that they're going to post on social media. What's your name, sir?
Mike Smith.
Mike Smith?
Yeah, I think you got it exactly right. You've defined it precise. Well, I wouldn't say exactly right. This is social experiment.
Okay.
And it's on video, and I'm on video too. So we're on video together.
Yeah, we're on video together.
Yep. So I think that you figured it out, and now we can wrap it up.
Okay, but am I the target? Or you got other people, or are you just focusing on me?
No, you're not a target. No, you're participating.
Okay. What am I participating in?
This social experiment.
Okay, what is the social experiment?
You just experienced it. You could tell me.
You wanted to get me, Frances Widdowson, who is a known controversial figure. You wanted to get me to talk about my views in a candid way, which I told everything truthful. You brought
All right, so that's the clip. That's just a little teaser for what we get into here and how Frances ended up in this situation, and as well who this individual, Igor, isn't that a good name for this guy, Igor? I kind of had a bit of a chuckle when I heard that. So anyways, besides that, Heather, will you come on and introduce our special guest?
Thank you, Tanya. Many of you have been following the ongoing saga of our next guest, Dr. Frances Widdowson, and we're so pleased that she's joining us on the Empower Hour this evening. Recently, she was a victim of an ambush perpetrated by Forge Media, a fake company backed by funding from the CBC, Aboriginal Peoples Television Network, and Canadian Heritage. Please understand that this was a taxpayer-funded hoax attacking frontline critics of the truth and reconciliation industry. Frances has been standing up against totalitarianism and government malfeasance, and we encourage you to check out her website for more information. Courage is contagious, and we're so grateful that Frances is joining us tonight to share her story. Will you all please help me welcome Frances Widdowson. Hello, Frances. Welcome to the Empower Hour.
Thanks for having me on.
Super. Thank you, Heather, and welcome, Frances. I just got to start by saying, how was your day? How are you doing today?
It was great. It was great. Never been better.
Good. Were you at any universities or trying to educate some of our kids in any way today? No? Okay.
No. I found out that Mount Royal University is appealing the Alberta Labour Relations Board ruling that the arbitrator's decision was unreasonable. So Mount Royal is not content to have spent millions of dollars already on this. They're going to get their lawyers to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars more.
Well, I'm sure that they are not doing it on their own and that they have some special funding coming in. Because that's not reasonable for the university, who should be focused on child's education, young people, they're not children anymore, and advancing them so they'd be good leaders in Canada. And instead they've taken on this war with you because how dare you step up and speak the truth. So I know that we kind of said, there's this possible win with you coming on tonight, and that was the potential of you being reinstated. So is that still on the table, or how is that all looking?
Well, this is applying for a leave to appeal, so they might not get that from the Labour Board, but it has to go back to the arbitrator, David Philip Jones, who did an absolutely terrible job on the decision and didn't provide really any reasons for why it couldn't be reinstated. So the Labour Board has provided a high bar for him to have to meet to show why he thinks that I shouldn't be reinstated. And I don't think he's going to be able to do that because there is no reason why I should not be able to be there at Mount Royal University and providing students with, opportunities to engage in critical thinking and open inquiry. It's just that some activists at Mount Royal feel unsafe if I'm there, which shouldn't be a consideration for an academic university.
Absolutely not. And I want to encourage our viewers, if you're not following Frances on X, I would encourage you to do that. I've seen you go into universities, into cafeterias, just to have some decent conversation. Let's throw these ideas around a little bit. Let's help them to think critically, but they've been so indoctrinated. And isn't that just part of the Marxist agenda, that you get this generation of children and you can then control the country as they march these little Marxist soldiers out on the other side? Through your experience in the universities and talking to them, for those kids that you can, are you seeing any kind of a shift where they're beginning to become a little more mature in their thinking, to realize they're being used as these pawns to attack you? What's the temperature there?
Not so far in the universities. The students who show up have been indoctrinated and encouraged by a group of activist professors who teach them that this is the right way to behave. And the University of Lethbridge is the worst university in Canada. Danielle Smith, if you're listening to this interview, you must intervene with the University of Lethbridge, which is a 3-time violator of the free speech policy. Leroy Littlebear, the administrator at University of Lethbridge, after students had assaulted me, stole my property, did all sorts of horrible things, said that the students had done a fantastic job in neutralizing me. That was an administrator at the University of Lethbridge. This university will not self-correct, and the only way it's going to change if the government says that it will withdraw 5% of the University of Lethbridge's funding if they do not hold an event with myself, Tony Hull, and Aaron Pete discussing whether the residential schools were genocidal, and that should be done.
Well, and I understand, I think that the Minister of Advanced Education has already pulled funding from one of the universities. It had to do with the woke agenda, the CRT and DEI. I do believe that there's going to be a strong shift in Alberta. I know for ourselves, we're doing some work in the background on this because it's great that we've just had this incredible win to get politics and ideology out of the education system, K to 12, but we've also got to focus on the types of teachers that they're training in these universities, in these faculties. We don't want Marxist teachers and activists coming back into the school and applying pressure and feeling free to do this, because then you have copycats of these professors that are damaging the hearts and minds of our kids going through university. And parents a lot of them are saying, I don't know my kid after 4 years or 2 years of being in a university anymore because of the focus on social activism.
Yeah, no, the universities trains the teachers. They train the professions, actually, which is a major source of problems. And it's really equity, diversity, and inclusion ideology, which comes out of, corporate managerialism and to some extent the views of Herbert Marcuse. Anyway, this whole equity, diversity, and inclusion ideology is incredibly toxic for educational processes, because it says that unless a member of an oppressed group feels that they are included, which means stopping people from saying things that they disagree with, then it should be prevented. Like everyone has to feel included from these groups, and they do not want ideas which they disagree discussed in any kind of professional training or any university programming. And this has just been an unbelievable assault on the academic character of universities.
Well, I was thinking last night, I worked till quite late, and then I had recorded Last Man Standing. And I like that little sitcom, and it ends up that Mike was asked from his daughter to speak at a university. This is recorded in 2016 in America. And so his daughter comes forward and he goes to, read his speech on how America is a great place and the land of opportunity. She goes, "Oh, no, you can't say that, Dad." And then, "Oh, no, you can't, welcome ladies and gentlemen." It's like, "Oh, no, you can't say that, Dad, either." And he's like, he throws his paper in the air and he's like, "What?" So I look at the history of how long they have been implementing this system and how many of the generation of our children are already going through this system and coming out the other end with these attitudes. And not being able to stand back and think, okay, I was used in this system. Now we are finding it with the trans kids who are getting into their 20s, mutilated bodies, sterilized, and going, oh my gosh, I was deceived. And I'm wondering how that wake-up moment will be for the kids that you're addressing and that you're having the courage to go in there and the love for them to try to say, "Hey guys, I'm actually here as a friend, not a foe. And I really want to help you out because you're being deceived." It's like you can't even get those words out of your mouth in order to have that conversation, I bet.
No, we can't. And it was interesting because we were at the legislature on May 27th in Victoria, and we actually had a permit to have the speeches take place. And it showed me how the difference of events are when you actually have backing from the institution. So that's really the key thing that has to be fought for now, is to have the universities hold these events with diverse perspectives on whatever claim it may be, whether it's trans activism or the residential schools or the Kamloops case. And University of Lethbridge is the place to start. And I'm really hoping, because I did speak to Miles McDougall, who is the advanced education minister, on April 30th. He said he would go speak with the University of Lethbridge to try to work out some kind of agreement between that university and myself to hold this event. But the University of Lethbridge is never going to agree to that on its own. It is completely at odds with the academic character of the university. And the only way it'll happen is if the government demands that it do it. And the government has the authority to do this.
Yeah.
It has the power. So I don't understand why the government of Alberta is not forcing the University of Lethbridge to hold this event when it sees what happened on February 4th, which was an absolutely shocking display of deranged students who have been encouraged by the faculty to act the way that they are. And this has the backing of the University of Lethbridge Faculty Association. They are completely behind these students. And unless you have, unions that are acting in an appropriate way to protect academic freedom, there's going to be no protection of open inquiry at universities. So they're not going to self-correct.
In times of financial uncertainty, safeguarding your assets is increasingly important. In response to ongoing inflation, economic challenges, and market instability, many Canadians are adopting the timeless strategy of investing in precious metals. Historically, gold and silver have held their value, safeguarding your assets against economic turmoil. Action for Canada is pleased to announce our partnership with Steve of Sun City Silver, providing valued members of A4C with expanded investment opportunities designed to help you achieve your financial goals. Steve is an ally of the Freedom Movement, and he's offering members of Action for Canada exclusive access to some of Canada's premier prices. By leveraging his connections with Silver Gold Bull, you can access competitive rates for securing your precious metals. Silver Gold Bull is a trusted Canadian leader, offering live pricing 24/7 and boasting nearly 400,000 five-star reviews on Trustpilot. For an order of $5,000, be sure to indicate you're an Action for Canada member and receive a complimentary 1967 silver dollar, courtesy of Sun City Silver. Expand your collection further by referring a new customer who places a similar order, and Steve will reward you with a special bonus thank you gift. Your purchase with Steve is a dual investment. You invest in your future while simultaneously supporting the Freedom Movement with a percentage of each sale benefiting Action for Canada. For more information, be sure to visit actionforcanada.com/purchasing-precious-metals/. Secure your assets, protect your future, support Action for Canada and the Freedom Movement. The information presented is for educational and informational purposes only and is not intended to provide financial, legal, or tax advice, as we are not licensed financial advisors, accountants, or attorneys and cannot provide professional counsel. Be advised that the content and information provided does not create a client relationship. We recommend you consult with a qualified professional advisor before making any financial, legal, or tax decisions. Please note that Action for Canada is not responsible for an individual's financial outcome. Remember, your decisions are your own, and we recommend doing your own research before making any investment.
They need government action.
Well, it sounds like the university needs to have a purge. They need to be cleaned out, and some of these people need to be fired for insubordination. I don't know if it would be like exploiting the students. Like, you've got a trusted position to educate our children. They're not there. Parents aren't paying all this money so that they can become social activists, and that's what it sounds like the campus has turned into.
Yeah, like professors are obligated to, in teaching their subject, to look at a variety of perspectives on the matter, and they're not doing that at all. It's a difficult thing, though, with respect to professors, because professors have academic freedom to teach courses in the way that they think is consistent with their scholarly obligations. So when you're actually hiring activists, it creates serious problems for the institution. Mm-hmm. But if we could just get this one event held, like, I can't stress it, enough, is if we could just have the one event and show the world what it's like. And Aaron Pete, who's the chief of the Hope Band, has been an incredible shining light who's trying to have these conversations. He's agreed to sit on this panel with me and Tony Hall, and the university can put forward whatever representative they want, and same with the faculty association. But if we could just get this one event and show how this is done, it could be a domino effect where other universities start to begin to do that. And that's really where it could start. And it's not very difficult to do. It just takes political courage for the government to demand that this happen.
Okay, well, we're going to take a clip of your appeal to Daniel Smith. We're going to make a clip from this, and we're going to send it to everybody that could possibly get it into the hands of Daniel Smith. And I hope and pray that she hears your words and that she acts on that. And, that they do a cleanup in the universities. I think some people need to be reviewed if this is the kind of thing that's happening, because we don't want our kids coming out on the other side and being violent. And I know that that is part of what had transpired there. Okay, so let's take a shift now to the Forge Media and to what had happened, how you're doing, where you're at now. And so I think actually I'd like to give you the floor for a minute so that you can let our viewers know, because of the censorship, and even like we're being censored all the time, and I imagine it's a little heavier tonight with you on. We're all over social media as well. And so for those of you who haven't heard your story yet and understand the implications of this and the importance of us keeping going and having our voice and speaking the truth, and I think the other side is losing the plot. And too many Canadians are realizing this has gone way too far with reparations, and now they're opposing it. And so the other side is trying to counter that again, I think, with these sneaky, silly attacks and some other strategies. Who knows what's up their sleeves? But I just will give you the floor for as long as you need, Frances, to talk about that situation.
This was one of the most bizarre things that has ever happened to me. And I've had a lot of things happen to me, so that's saying something. And I was approached by a fake company called Forge Media. Same woman, Pam Gibson, who's actually Molly Gore, contacted me to ask if I wanted to be part of a docu-series on having a more objective approach to Canadian history, and also talked about the free speech at universities, that problem, and Aboriginal sovereignty, the challenges that poses. So there's a lot of different things they said to me, which I was very interested in talking about. So anyway, I wasn't really expecting anything nefarious. I did look at their website, and they had some documentaries on there. It all looked fine. They were going to pay for me to go out to Vancouver, put me up in a hotel, and I was going to have this interview. And when I arrived at this studio, I was met by Igor Vamos, and her name was Mercer, Amy Mercer. She was from the UK, so she had a British accent. The thing that was odd is these people were incredibly fake and excessively nice and smarmy, and I thought that was strange. They told me that I was going to be sitting with a actor who was dressed up as Johnny MacDonald to get the theatrical side of how difficult it was to play Johnny MacDonald in this day and age. And I thought that was a bit strange. And I went in. The interviewer, whose name was Becky, who turns out to be Dakota Ray Hebert from Saskatchewan, a comedian supposedly from Saskatchewan, she was all dressed up with a lot of makeup and looked very odd for a person interviewing people about historical matters. But and then she asked some really softball questions, didn't seem to be informed at all about the issues. And then about over half an hour in, two Aboriginal men arrived into the studio. I thought they were disrupting the interview, and they poured out a bag of children's shoes onto the table. And I was quite shocked about that. And I sort of looked at them, and I was sort of asking them, why are you doing this? Are you trying to make a comparison with the Holocaust to the residential schools? And they just glared at me. So they were glaring at me. And then I turned and looked at the person who was calling herself Becky, and she was glaring at me with, incredible hatred in her eyes. So I knew at that point that this was obviously some kind of setup. And I didn't have my phone with me because it was in my computer bag in the other room. So I said, I have my medications in my bag, which I need to take, because I didn't want to leave the room. I wanted to be able to document it. And I said, could someone please bring me my bag? And they brought me my bag. And when they brought it to me, I whipped out my smartphone and started interrogating the guy who called himself Mike Smith, who actually was Igor Vamos from the Yes Men, which is a prank show from the States. And I said to him, this looks like a setup that someone's going to try and paint me as a racist and post this on social media. And he agreed and said, yes, that's what they were going to do. So I found that to be pretty shocking. Anyway, when I went to the airport after interrogating Vamos for a while, they turned off the lights, so I couldn't continue with the interrogation. I went back to the airport and I did this live stream from the airport bar going, I just can't believe what has happened to me. And fortunately, Lindsay Shepherd was watching that. And so she saw what I was talking about and knew that is exactly what had happened to her. And then I got contacted by Jerry Amernick, who's wrote Sleepwalking. He'd been set up too. Lindsay did incredible research and was able to use AI reverse imaging to find out who some of these people were. And that allowed us to piece this together. Then I got contacted by the RCMP veterans. One guy, Clinton Jaws, who's got a YouTube presence, told me that CBC had taken a group of veterans to their studios in Vancouver and had got them dressed up in their Red Surge uniforms and put them on a stage in front of an alleged studio audience and humiliated them with a supposed speech by King Charles, who said that the RCMP was going to be dissolved because of the terrible things that it had done. Prince William, an actor playing Prince William, was brought in to seal the deal about the dissolution of the RCMP, supposedly. And Clinton was just sitting there saying, this is just outrageous. And he got up and left and was, followed around the RCMP studios. And then another woman who was a musician was brought, and she had nothing to do with anything. And they humiliated her on this stage and got her to play her instrument to God Save the King, did all sorts of horrible things to her. And then I heard that you had been set up and that a number of other people have been approached. So it was this massive type of setup operation, which is evidently costing between $2.5 and $5 million of public funds to do this and, humiliate a whole bunch of people who have views that these people disagree with.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that overview of it, Frances. And I did watch the RCMP's live that he did walking through all of it. And I really appreciate it at the end when he was trying to call a friend as well who had been set up, because he was concerned for his emotional and psychological well-being. And because by the time you're a retired cop, you've seen a lot of things and been exposed to a lot of trauma. And so then to be humiliated this way instead of honored would probably upset some of them off. And I wonder, I just wonder if something drastic had happened. I wonder if CBC and the rest of them would have thought, yeah, that was really funny. Like going through this whole process, I saw no humor in it once I found out. And I found out, so they had emailed us back in the end of March. And we have Holly, the frontline. She's the one that checks our call to emails and goes through and responds to everybody. She responded to them like, what's this about? And at April 13th, they got back and said, oh, it's a documentary, but it went to spam. So she didn't see it till the end of April as I was heading on a trip on business. And so I'll reach out to her. And so I said, oh, yeah, sorry about that. Sorry to miss the documentary. It went to spam. Hope that you have success with it. Oh, no, it's not too late. Can we come next week and we'll interview you? And like you, I looked up the website. I researched a little bit and I thought, okay, everything looks fairly legitimate here. And so once it was done, I actually gave her a hug because it was just that friendly thing. She was in my home. That's who I am. It's shame on her because I am who I am. And I think that if they were to play the interview, they'd be humiliated because of the genuineness and because of the answers that I've given. And then they said, oh, yeah, if you know anybody else. I said, because I had asked too, who is it? They said, if you know anybody else. I says, well, who have you reached out to first? And they said, oh, just landowners in Richmond who were affected. So again, lies, 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 lies. And they said, we are trying, but because I was feeling uneasy, I thought, well, I'm not going to give you a bunch of names, unless I know who you are, because something was already setting off. And then they said, oh, could you help us get a hold of Dallas? So I happened to text Dallas Brody, and I said, hey, Dallas, they're apparently doing this documentary and would love to be in contact with you. That was in the evening. She gets back to me the next morning and she goes, oh my goodness, Tanya, they reached out to us, having been in the media business. She saw some red flags and didn't fall for it. And she says, haven't you seen what happened to Frances? And I'm like, no. And so then I saw your video and I'm going, wow, you terrible people. And so that was sort of my segue into being introduced and included in this. I kind of say, you know what? It's a badge of honor. And Frances, honestly, wear it proudly because.
No, I'm not. And people think I want the show to be canceled and I don't. I want them to produce my segment.
Yeah.
I want to see, I like, maybe I'm more powerful than I thought I was and I need to be taken down a peg. And I'd like to see if it's funny what they're going to do. I find it hard to think of what the funnies, but these pranking shows, they have their place. They're usually used to, as I say, contest those in power. And hey, I guess I'm becoming a powerful person. So I deserve to be pranked just as much as anyone does. Now, the woman RCMP veteran who had psychological damage because she has nothing to do with this at all. She wanted to communicate how well she was doing with her music career after retiring. Someone like that's a real disaster because she has psychological problems because what they've done to her and how they manipulated her and humiliated her. And she thought she was supposed to be honored, and she took time out of her busy schedule to go to Vancouver. Like, that's a different matter because, someone like that's quite fragile. But I am not fragile, and I would be happy for them to air my segment. And same with Lindsay Shepherd. Lindsay Shepherd is saying, bring it on. Yeah. You produce your funny satirical show. Let the public decide whether it's funny or not. I'm happy to abide by whatever, because I think, it's dangerous for people not to be able to be pursuing their artistic kind of vision, when it involves the kind of deception that they've engaged in, going into people's homes and so on. That's a bit of a problem, but I was not harmed in any way. I thought it was great. I've had, weeks of entertainment. I got paid $1,000, which is far more than what I get paid to.
I didn't get anything.
You didn't get anything. You should demand your $1,000 for sure.
And I want the original
$1,000.
I want the original recording because I want to make use of it. It was literally one of the best interviews I've ever done on this topic. I'm kind of like, thanks for asking. And, I provided my answer, but they had you sign, this waiver. And I'm like, well, I signed under false pretenses, false name, false company, this and that. So I own that property and I could charge them for trespassing. No. They're lucky if I don't charge them for trespassing. It is just shocking. But I think what struck me is, because we're on the front line as truth tellers in Canada, we've come up a lot against a lot of opposition. I've been at this since 2015. And, the backlash during COVID, oh, I hope you get COVID and die and stuff like that. And those are just ignorant comments because people are ignorant. They just don't have the knowledge about the situation. And I think in a year, they're going to change their tune, and they do. And so all of that had kind of, become old news. And so now we're living in a bit of a different era where more Canadians are interested in hearing what we have to say and what they can do about it. And so for these people to have come into my home, my private space, I was like, bad form, really bad form.
Yeah, well, Lindsay, and Lindsay doesn't want the show canceled. She wants her segment to be produced just like I do. but they had her social insurance number. They strung her along for several months as a consultant to develop this Sir John A. Macdonald doll. That was very, very intrusive what they did to her. But in terms of my own situation, I really didn't have very much contact with them at all, except for discussing my travel arrangements. So I'm there's no problem as far as I'm concerned, and I want to see their produce my segment. I have no problem with it. And I wasn't harmed. I got paid $1,000, so I'd like to see what they're going to do with it and whether it's funny, because humor is an odd thing. What one person finds as funny is not what another person finds as funny. Aboriginal people might have a totally different conception of humor than Aboriginal, or some Aboriginal people might. So, hey, bring it on, CBC. I'm waiting for that. So if you think I'm trying to cancel you, I'm not. And I'd be happy for you to do whatever you want to do with my interview.
Yeah. I look at it too, like I wouldn't consider myself a funny person. Like I have a good sense of humor and I might give a zinger now and then, but there was like nothing funny, throughout the interview. So I'm like, how could you make something funny out of that? I really, my bottom line is I don't think they meant for it to be funny. I think they meant for it to be an attack, that they thought it'd take it down. But that's the difference between them and us. When you have integrity, when you are truthful, and when you're a person with a good moral standing, you rise above people like that. And so, the majority of Canadians are looking at them and saying, man, you're a disgusting person, or you're deceitful. Like nobody really appreciates that. And so they'll wear it. They'll wear it.
Yeah, well, satire, this is the thing about satire, is that it often is very edgy. It often upsets a lot of people. And it's important to have that, the prank shows as well. I think they can be effective in terms of speaking truth to power. But a lot of these people are not powerful people. Myself, accepted, like I'm very powerful. I hadn't realized how powerful I am until Forge Media decided to target me. But and I just keep on thinking about this poor RCMP veteran who's just a musician. She wasn't even in the communities or doing anything with respect to Aboriginal policy or anything. Like Clinton's a bit of a, he's quite brash and he's been, critiquing land acknowledgements and so on and saying sorry. But she was completely bewildered because it made no sense to her at all. Like it was, here she is, got these Aboriginal people in regalia who are, disparaging the RCMP, and she's thinking, what has this got to do? Why is this happening? Like she was completely taken aback and spent, weeks having it run through her mind as to everything that had gone on. Whereas I knew immediately what this was all about. I didn't take me long to figure this out. And, so it wasn't there was no harm done, but I don't know that the ethics of this situation are very tricky, and I don't know where that lies in terms of these kinds of antics. But CBC has been failing and I'm a supporter of CBC, when it was a good institution doing actual investigative journalism and providing, filling in the gaps where the private sector couldn't. They've been failing for over a decade, and they've got to cover this just like they would other kinds of scandals. And the big problem is how the CBC has covered the Kamloops 215 false claim. And they must have panels where you allow critics to be able to speak to those that are supporters of this claim. And they have not done that at all over the last 5 years. And this is where the huge failure is with the CBC. And I'm hoping that this, overreach that they've done is going to restore that once great institution to, what it was, 20, 30 years ago. So that'll happen.
Well, there needs to be a reckoning with the Kamloops situation. And, as we all hear, and people will say, the CBC is bought and paid for at this point. And, when Hitler was in place, he had his media arm with the propaganda, and we have a different kind of Hitler in this day and age. I don't know if that's the comparison. Marxists, whatever you want to call them, communist leaders take over, and so they need the media giving a certain scenario to keep the populations, in following along with their orders. And I think this mass grave thing is because they're so tied into the United Nations agenda to take over the world, if you want to call it that way, to have a global government. And then the main thing is we are very rich in natural minerals and resources, and they want their hands on that. So Klaus Schwab with his, own nothing and be happy, we thought, how are they going to come take our land? I own my home. I worked hard. That and I'd be darned if I'm going to hand it over illegal agreements that are going on in the background and all this scenario. And so they're using the Indians as pawns. And that is what I'm so disgusted by, because they've basically been wards of the state. On the reserves, they don't own their properties. Now that they've given Aboriginal titles to the lands of property owners, that means Aboriginal title has always meant that the government owns Aboriginal title. So they still don't actually own the land. And it is just a farce that's going on. And we just appeal to all of the Indians to get on board. We have a common enemy, and it's our government. It's those who are lying to you. And if in the end they think that they're actually going to profit from this, what does the last 11 years under the Trudeau and Carney government tell them? They're still living in maybe even greater poverty than they were 11 years ago. It's not about helping them. It's about stealing our resources and taking over the land so that they can do that. Would you agree with that statement?
That's part of it. It's quite a complex picture. The Aboriginal industry, which is the group of lawyers and consultants who have been working at this since the 1970s, they use legal mechanisms to foment grievances and then use more legal mechanisms to do it. So part of it is the Aboriginal industry has taken over the legal profession and the judiciary. And it really was Section 35 of the Constitution, which needs to be removed from the Constitution. That's the big struggle, is that Aboriginal people have the same rights as everyone else in Canada, except for they have additional rights. So they have more rights than other people.
Yep.
This is what George Orwell called some animals being more equal than others within a system. So that was a huge mistake that happened in the 1980s. We have to work to build the coalitions to remove Section 35. That will remove the Aboriginal industries, sort of mechanism for making these kinds of assertions and restore liberal democratic principles to Canada. And it's not just terrible for non-Aboriginal people, it's terrible for Aboriginal people, because what it does is it puts them under the thumb of these neo-tribal elites who act as dictators in the communities and just basically take away all the funding from other people. So that's a major part of the story. The other story is trying to get the working class to believe that they're genocidaires, and therefore they have no reason to demand increases in their living standards. They should just take the inflationary pressures and the difficulties, and they're trying to make ends meet. So, why should you make demands on the system if you're part of a genocidal, population that's done such terrible harms? You deserve everything that you get. So don't complain about your circumstances. And then we have, of course, the international forces, which are very much at work trying to erode Canadian sovereignty and take over Crown lands. The thing about the individual property owners and so on, although this is important, it's a bit of a distraction because what the Aboriginal industry is really interested in, and these international forces, is the Crown lands. They want to get hold of Crown lands, and the property rights, the individual property rights, that's really a side issue. Mm-hmm. So what we need to do is protect the Crown lands, which are what raises the revenue for the government to be able to provide the services that all Canadians need. So that's something that's got to be understood, is that I suspect that this individual property rights thing is a bit of a red herring, but we need to assert government control over Crown lands and get rid of the Aboriginal kinds of consultations and everything that are going on with respect to this. And Section 35, removing Section 35 is a way to do that. And, UNDRIP goes without saying. Just repeal that, stop the legislative enactment of this kind of international kind of dynamic, which is going to enable international elements to take resources away from Canadians.
Right. Our government, I say they're committing treason in the sense that they're allowing an unelected international body to interfere with our freedoms and democracy, to undermine our Constitution, to misinform people regarding our Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And we've been on the front line as well of teaching Canadians about the Coronation Oath, which is a binding document, and it secures our land rights within the Coronation Oath, and the Constitution and Charter must align with that. That's another topic. But the point being that people lose for lack of knowledge. And knowledge is so important. Educating people is so important. And that's why they really want to shut us down, so that they don't understand what their unalienable rights are as even property owners, as citizens, the right to be equal. And that's another reason Section 35 needs to go in all the treaties. We just need to tear them up, and everybody just be treated equal in this country. Will benefit everyone. We have, through the Europeans coming to Canada, we offered so much development and education, hospitals, schools, not the schools we have nowadays. I don't recommend those, but you know what I mean? Like there was so much good that came from the creation of this beautiful, wonderful country, Canada. And we need to unite, and we need to really get involved in elections as a solution. Just last night, I think everybody received it this morning in their inboxes. There's 4 elections, municipal and trustee elections in 4 different provinces. It was BC, Manitoba, PEI. There's one other missing, but these elections at the community level are so incredibly vital and important. And a lot of the activists, they are preparing individuals to get into those positions so they can move them up and up and up to be activists at higher levels with more power. And so we got to take the power back at the community level. You need to get behind people within your community, and you need to help fund them. You need to go door knocking. You need to scrutineer, and we need to replace these individuals so that we can start having terrific decisions made and legislation passed and repeals made by provinces, and then hopefully all the way up federally. But there's a lot of power in your vote. You can't take it for granted. You have to be active now before elections and start preparing. So on that, Frances, is there, you know what, before you go, before we end, is we're almost at the top of the hour, I wanted to ask you, what do you think about this decision by the Senate committee to include this amendment to criminalize denialism? What's your thoughts on that?
It's an outrage. I can't believe that this is happening, but of course we do have the precedent of Holocaust denial being made illegal too. So we should remove, like, you shouldn't be it shouldn't be criminalized to have discussions about historical circumstances. So that's something that's already there, because people are saying, oh, well, because Holocaust denial is illegal, therefore why not residential school being illegal? Well, Holocaust denial shouldn't be illegal either. Mm-hmm. People should be able to contest whatever the historical circumstances are. Personally, I think there's a lot of evidence to show that there was a genocide that was committed in the Second World War, but if someone's going to contest that, then they just are irrational and don't have an understanding of the facts. But that's being used now to stop the discussion about the residential schools. And it's amazing how having discussions about the Kamloops case, which is obviously an improbable story, like there's not one parent who said that children never came home. There's been commissions in the 1990s and the Truth and Reconciliation Commission where no one ever mentioned anything about clandestine burials at that time. There was a book called Behind Closed Doors, which had no mention of murders or clandestine burials. So this doesn't make any sense as to how 200 children could have been murdered and buried clandestinely. And to contest that ridiculous story is now going to be illegal and is going to put you in jail for 2 years. It just shows you how desperate they are to prevent the truth from being put forward. That's what, when you can no longer win the argument, then you got to bring in coercion to intimidate people and stop them from having the discussions that need to be had. And we're going to talk about traumatizing Aboriginal people. Many Aboriginal people were traumatized by hearing that hundreds of children were murdered and put into a clandestine burials in Kamloops. So isn't it going to be beneficial for Aboriginal people to understand that really there is no evidence to support that claim?
Well, exactly. And you've touched on so many important points, is that there is strong evidence regarding, what happened in World War II with the Jews, but we don't have any strong evidence here, not even a little bit. And if it was my relatives, and they're all about, Indians are all about ceremonies and rituals and all the rest of it. Well, wouldn't you want all of these 215 children dug up to give them a proper, dignified burial? It's like, it doesn't match. Nothing is lining up. And so, of course, and the fact is that we're paying for this.
Yes, $12.1 million with the application which says excavations on it. And this nonsense that the Globe and Mail is trying to perpetuate when it says, oh, well, they could allocate it to other things if they chose to. The form, the application was for excavations. Those additional things were just to assist with the excavations. So this is absurd. The band agreed to do the excavations between 2021 to 2023. The 13 family heads agree. But now, because they sense that it's not going to go their way in terms of the evidence, they're backing away from it. And Pierre Poilievre, he can hold this band to account by asking questions about it in the House of Commons. Aaron Gunn can take my petition forward demanding that excavations should be done. But those leaders in the Conservative Party federally are doing nothing to hold that Kamloops ban to account.
Well, you know what? It's not just the Conservative parties doing nothing on this issue. I put an e-petition forward, and for nearly a year, June will be a year, to designate the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist group. They won't take it on. Yet Poilievre is down on the library, Vancouver Library, with a sea of Iranians there, the Persians with their flags, the true Persians, not the Muslims. And he's going, we got to get rid of the IRGC. And so they're all like, yeah. And so what's he going to be saying next week to the Iranians or the Palestinians? And then we know that Jeff Everly is trying to get a petition put forward for an MP to sponsor it. And Leslyn Lewis and Garnet Genuis have refused, and that's to readdress the conversion therapy ban, because his daughter was attacked by the trans mob in the government. And, there needs to be, there needs to be accountability. So people want to hang on to the Conservative Party. I just said how important voting is. And it's like, you can't keep voting the party line when they obviously aren't doing what they can, even in the slightest way. Like this e-petition that you need sponsored is legitimate. What could they possibly think to lose by putting that forward, or any of these other issues? So I'm highly suspicious of them. You're the third person now that they're not sponsoring a very critically important one. And I'll just go back to the 215 children accusation is, it went all the way up the chain, as Michelle Sterling did that wonderful documentary, or response to the documentary of sugarcane. And then China calling Canada a genocidal nation. And, it's all strategically, all the chess pieces are being put in place so that these globalists can come in and do exactly what they wanted to. And they've been planning this for decades. So they're not going to let go easily. And again, just a final statement. That's why it is so important for us to work as hard as we can. You are at war, people. We are at war in Canada. And if we want to see this change, we need to get good people into office who are going to turn this over and defend our Constitution and what our fathers of Confederation gifted us with. So in closing, Frances, what are words of encouragement or instruction? What would you like to say to our viewers?
We need to fight now and fight hard before it's all gone. We are heading down a totalitarian path. And what we need to do is we need to have honesty, transparency, accountability, and legal equality. And we need to fight hard for those principles in a liberal democratic society, because if we don't have those in place, we're going to have nothing to protect us from these incredibly serious violations to our ability to live in a democratic society.
Right. And so thank you for that. And how can people help you out? I want people that if they hear Frances Widdowson is showing up in an event, get out there and join her. Don't be a scaredy cat. I mean, if the mob, they might have 1,000 of them, but if there was 4,000 of us, the dynamics change. So get out there, participate. Your presence is important, but how else can they support you, Frances?
Well, you can get Miles McDougall and Daniel Smith to hold this event at the University of Lethbridge with myself, Tony Hall, and Aaron Pete. I have a fundraiser which I use to cover my expenses when I go to the universities to hold the Spectrum Street epistemology, sort of events at various campuses, which I'm hoping to go to Langara College in September, because this is terrible what's happened at Langara, because they shut down a discussion about the residential schools and no one even knew about that there. And just generally, my YouTube channel and Twitter accounts, feel free to follow me and subscribe to those, because, the numbers helps you to, make an impact on Canadian society. So I think those are the major areas where people can support me.
So that's wonderful. Now, your website is www.wokeacademy.info. Can they find your fundraising page and other information, YouTube, all of that on your website? Yes. Okay.
And the YouTube is Frances Widdowson 1600, and Twitter is Frances Widows 1 on Twitter. You can find me pretty easily just by Googling my name. And that the fundraising information is both on Twitter and on YouTube.
All right. Okay. Well, Frances, thank you so much for joining me on the show. I love you. You're a tenacious lady. As I say, go wear that badge of honor proudly. And on behalf of Canadians, thank you. Thank you for everything that you're doing.
It's my pleasure.
All right. Thanks. Okay. Bye. All right, everyone. Isn't that just amazing? I love listening to Frances. What a smart lady, tenacious, courageous. And as we say, courage is contagious. So see and hear what she's doing, show up at these events. We need people not standing at the back of the room, but coming forward, because together we can make quite an army for truth. And I think that is absolutely critical in this day and age. So next week on the Empower Hour, well, look at that. It's going to be me. I like to do a show every now and then. I would love to do a show every week, because what I'm working on here in the background, you guys, it's just absolutely amazing. I've got so much to tell, but I don't have time to go on to X and to other platforms to even give updates in a day. So I'm going to take advantage next week. As we know, it is June 3rd today, and we are already starting up so-called Pride Month. Isn't it one of the seven deadly sins? How do they say that? Somebody help me out. Anyways, it's awful. It's not well thought of. Pride is not a good thing. And anyways, so they're at it. I believe that industry as well is beginning to lose a lot of support. We heard last year that Pride events, the parades, were losing a lot of funding because of policies that Trump had put in place in the United States, which ended up being car dealerships and individuals that had to pull because it was from an effect. Anyways, it was great. And so now I believe that this month we should be taking action for Canada's information, like the banned non-governmental flag letter that we've created, and start educating everyone who's flying that flag. We want you going into businesses. This is a powerful political flag. Pride is political. The LGBTQ are a political organization. And so we need to understand that, and we need to name it. And just like we wouldn't let any other political organization come in and take over all of society, we're not going to allow them to do it. But again, people have been bullied by the LGBT community. I've heard store owners say they just got so fed up with being asked to put that little sticker in their window that they gave in. And I think once they read the letter that about the pedophiles behind the trans flag, for instance, and their deviancy, wouldn't that change your mind? Like, are you really, you want that trans flag up there? And Gilbert said that this is what flags are for. Flags are about proclaiming power. So why are we allowing them to take power of our school boards and our city halls and society? It's just got to stop. So the other side of it is I am going to be going over a new resource. I am challenging the term religion because we have the freedom of religion in Canada, and that was meant to keep the government out of the business of the church. It was not to provide all of these other individuals coming from foreign nations, bringing their failed foreign systems of belief and transplanting them here. And those were known in biblical times as false gods. There is no such thing as false religion. These are false gods. And so God says, first two commandments, he says, you shall have no other gods before me or make for yourselves idols. So we have to tear these down in Canada. And that will lead also into a conversation regarding what Islam looks like in Canada at this point and the threat that that poses. So I hope you'll join us. Mark it on your calendar. I think it's going to be a very interesting show. And to wrap up tonight, the Bible verse is going to be first from Exodus 34:12. It says, be careful not to make a treaty with those who live in the land where you're going. This will prove to be a trap to you. And isn't that just exactly what we're experiencing? When our founding fathers came in, that was one big mistake they made. They should have never signed treaties with the Aboriginal people because they certainly don't appreciate it, right? I mean, they're just taking our money and running with it and then complaining and crying out discrimination. And I think we're all fed up with it. We're done. We're done funding this system. And but you know what? We have to overturn the whole thing. And I do believe that means opening up the Constitution and removing Section 35 and tearing up the treaties. So it may be harsh to say, but we can see it's not working. This is not working. And if we want Canada to be genuinely united, we need to make some serious changes. So the closing verse is my favorite, Galatians 6:9. Let us not become weary in doing good, but at the proper time, we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. So don't give up, because Action for Canada isn't giving up. We're excited about what's coming. We're taking back some territory from the enemy, and we're going to keep doing that until we win. And we need you on our side. So please help financially support us. We appreciate your prayers and your words of encouragement as well. So thank you. God bless you, and God bless Canada.